8 members present. We need 2 for a quorum. We have Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Fuhrer, Ms. Goldberg, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Holden, who was on time but then left, Ms. Misakowski, and Mrs. Walters. I just want everybody to know that Al Davis yesterday said that Nate Holden was a smart young man. Old man.
He says very, very smart.
Very, very smart. And we know what we all think of Al Davis.
We know what to think of Nate Holden, too. You love him.
Sergeant, can you see if you can find 2 members? Mr. Burnson, Mrs. Chick, Ms. Galanter, Mr. Rudy Savarnich, Mr. Ridley Thomas, Mr. Wax. We're all expecting you here in the council chamber. Call the roll.
Alacon, Alatorre, Burnson, Chick, Fury, Galanter, Goldberg, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Ridley, Thomas, Sabornis, Wax, Walters, Ferraro. 10 council members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
Will the council please come to order? Please. This is a meeting of the City Council for the City of Los Angeles on the 28th day of January 1998. There are 15 council districts in the city. Regular meeting days are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We are currently being viewed by cable subscribers throughout the Los Angeles area on Channel 35, and we're also being monitored by council phone. The first order of business.
Approval of the minutes.
Mrs. Chick moves, Mrs. Mistakowski seconds. There's no objections, unanimous vote. The next item.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Unanimous vote. Next item.
Items 1 through 4 are items noticed for public hearing.
Okay. We have we have people that want to be heard on 3 and 4. We'll call those special. And one is to be continued until
March 11th.
March 11th. Is there any objections to that? Seeing none, that'll be the order. Members of the council, last night there was a performance in the Valley in Woodland Hills, and it was, to my surprise, it was quite good. It was starring Laura Chick and Dick Reardon, and it was love letters, and it was really very well done. And we have a star here. Politics is out of the question now. She is working with Aaron Spelling, and they got a show going pretty soon. So I want to congratulate Laura Chick.
Thank you very much. I thought you were grumpy. That I made you stay too late.
You should. Nate Holden wasn't there. Okay, members, we'll take item 3. We have somebody that wants to be heard on that.
Mr. President, before you go to item 3, item 2, I need a special motion from the floor to confirm the project as modified by waiving the administrative fee of
Okay, Mrs. Chick moves. Prepare the roll on 2. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
Item 3, we have Brenda Wilson that wants to be heard. Brenda Wilson.
Good morning. I'm talking on 3, and I just wanted to say, first of all, my name is Brenda Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of New Image Emergency Shelter. We've been providing emergency shelter services in the city and the county since 1989. We identify sites similar to the one that we're in right now, and to provide emergency sheltering from November to March, and would like to continue to do so this year. As you know, this is a short-term program, so it's over in March, and we would appreciate your recommendation to continue this great need. Our primary emphasis during this period is mainstreaming, and we have case managers that work specifically for that purpose to mainstream homeless clients back into independent living. And with your approval of this resolution, we can continue to do so. Thank you.
Hold on a second. Okay, there's public.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I forgot something very important. And that is, when we moved into the existing site, we did meet with a lot of the owners. And we don't anticipate any problems, but they know that if there are any problems, they know how to reach myself and the board members for rectification. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3 is before us. Any discussion on this? If not, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 eyes.
That is approved. Next item.
Items 5 through 12 are items of which public hearings have been held.
No, in item 4, we didn't do 4.
Oh, I thought you called 4 special.
No, we will. We call 3 and 4 special. But Billy Ware, James Colbert, and Harvey Steinberg, you want to be heard on this?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the council. My name is Billy Ware. I represent Southern California Gas Company. I have with me Mr. James Colbert. We're here today to ask your further consideration of the ordinance that's before you. We would urge that the ordinance not be adopted in its current format. Generally, we believe that the issues that relate to this ordinance can be accomplished with those of us who cut it in the street being strictly held and accountable for the cuts that they make in the streets. But specifically, we're here today because we think this ordinance in its current format conflicts with the contract that we currently have with the city, our franchise agreement. We have a franchise agreement with the city that provides that for us to do the kind of work described in this ordinance. We pay $11 million a year to the city to do this kind of work, and we've concluded at the gas company that this ordinance conflicts with our ability to do that work. Our attorneys at Southern California Gas Company has looked at the ordinance and looked at our franchise and come to this conclusion, but we've also enlisted the help from Melody and Myers, Mr. Colbert, who represents them here, to take a look at the ordinance and the franchise agreement to provide information to us relative to whether or not there is genuine conflict in the ordinance and the franchise agreement that we have with the city. That is our main reason for being here today, is that we think that we are exempt from the ordinance as proposed today, and would ask your consideration in looking at an amendment that would provide that exemption. I would like Mr. Colbert to speak to his investigation into this matter.
Honorable members of the City Council, I am here, as Mr. Ware indicated, to speak to a single issue, which is the question of whether the franchise that was negotiated between the gas company and the City of Los Angeles provides the gas company with special rights which would be violated by the proposed ordinance, and therefore requires that there be an amendment to accommodate those rights. I am a lawyer, as Mr. Ware indicated, and I'm known to at least some of the council members, and I could spend some considerable time discussing the constitutional precepts that underlie this issue, but I don't think that's necessary, because at heart this is a very simple problem. This franchise, the gas company's franchise, is not something that was imposed upon the city by the state of California, or something that goes back into the mists of time that has been imposed upon this council by some 19th century determination of a prior council. This is a recent franchise. It was negotiated in 1992. It is only 6 years old, 6 years into its 20-year term. The language of that franchise was not imposed upon the city. This is a charter city. It negotiates its own franchises. The language of that franchise was freely negotiated between the city and the Southern California Gas Company. That franchise includes, as a specific grant of rights to the gas company, in exchange for the franchise fee being paid, the right to excavate in the streets. That's not an implied right, as may be the case, or may be argued to be the case with respect to other franchises. It is expressly granted by the language freely negotiated by the City of Los Angeles. The question is, having freely negotiated that language, having conveyed that right to the gas company, may the city now impose upon the gas company an additional charge for doing that which the city agreed the gas company could do for its franchise fee.
Okay.
I suggest that that is not a terribly complicated issue. Whatever the rights of other franchisees, implied or otherwise, to excavate in the streets, here we have an express agreement by the city to allow the gas company to do that for its franchise fee. And respectfully, I believe that the franchise has to prevail under the Constitution, and that the ordinance, if adopted, has to be amended to accommodate that. And I know that language has been proposed and submitted to various I think to all of the council members, and to the city attorney's office as well for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. We have Harvey Steinberg wants to be heard.
Honorable members of the City Council, my name is Harvey Steinberg. I'm a member of the Los Angeles Greater Area Ventura chapter of the Building Industry Association, and it is on behalf of thousands of builders that I'm here this morning. One of the first problems that occurred in looking at this ordinance is the fact that 2/3 of all the city cuts in the street are done by city agencies. There is another percentage beyond that that is handled by annual permits. In both cases, there are no controls relative to building permits and oversight, and we feel that this is a fundamental problem. The other item that struck us is the fact that the nexus, the relationship between street cuts and deterioration sometime off in the future, to us has not been demonstrated, because streets are not being repaired by standards that are acceptable in terms of engineering practices. Therefore, the testing of those streets by this research report came up with unusual results. I'm also concerned about the fact that builders will be required to pay almost 100% of the cost because of a recent Public Utilities Commission ruling that says the ratepayers do not pay for an individual cut, but it's the actual benefiters of that cut that pay for it. So it adds an unusual burden to the Building Industry Association, and it also makes it difficult for us, again, with additional costs to build in Los Angeles. I also have a series of problems with the actual ordinance that have been spelled out in my document that I left at each of your desks. We're concerned, for example, about the fact that people who do street cuts correctly, and I have a 16-year history of cutting up LA streets, none of my cuts have failed because I take great diligence in terms of providing the correct procedure. And I overview all of my work. But the builders who don't care, or the people who cut up streets rather who don't care, are going to be painted with the same brush as those of us who do care. In other words, you're penalized to do it right or wrong with this ordinance. We're also worried about the fact that the monies for the street cut deterioration will be going into an account that could very well be used for street cuts that occurred before the ordinance gets passed. The city at this point in time is 10 years behind providing adequate surfacing of city streets. And we're worried about the monies being used for that purpose. We'd like to see the monies put into an account, interest earning, and to be used only for street cuts that are to be collected, monies to be collected by this ordinance. We're also wanting to have everybody who cuts the streets, including the Bureau of Street Maintenance, apply for building permits. There should be no exemptions to this requirement. Thank you very much for your opportunity.
Thank you, and that's all the cards. So the public hearing is closed. Mrs. Waller, do we want a presentation on this first?
Yes, Mr. President, I think a presentation by Jerry Montgomery, the City Attorney's Office, and people from the Department of Public Works would be most beneficial at this point, and then I would like to
Joel?
speak when they finish.
I got
Good morning. I'm Dee Carey with the City Administrative Office. This item has been before you as part of the a budget process for the last 2 years. It's to establish a fee for utilities and other entities that cut into the city's streets. Street cuts, no matter how well restored and maintained, shorten the life of the streets by increasing the rate at which the pavement deteriorates, requiring increased maintenance and more frequent resurfacing. This has been demonstrated through scientific studies conducted all across the country and here in Los Angeles. Our consultant study determined that the street cuts shorten the life of our major streets from 25 years to 16.5 years, and local streets from 34.5 to 28.5 years. The added cost of this reduction in terms of more frequent and more extensive resurfacing is approximately $16.4 million a year. Proposed fee schedules have been developed which would charge an amount per square foot of the cut, depending on how recently the street was resurfaced and whether it is a major or local street. The revenue from the fee would be placed in a special fund and used for the maintenance and improvement of streets. The city attorney has prepared 3 ordinances, one to establish the fee, one to establish a special fund to receive the revenue, and one to amend various sections of the municipal code to make those sections applicable to city departments and to eliminate annual permits. A separate resolution is presented to establish the amount of the fee. It's recommended the council adopt the ordinances and the resolution, and in addition to the Bureau of Street Maintenance, we should be authorized 2 additional staff for implementation. The director of the Bureau of Street Maintenance is here to make a presentation and introduce our consultant, and they have a slideshow prepared to show you some of the background work for this fee.
Good morning. Greg Scott, Bureau of Street Maintenance. I would like to introduce to you Dr. Mohammed Shaheen. Dr. Shaheen has a doctorate in civil engineering from the University of Texas at Austin. He's been in the business of evaluating pavements for over 25 years. He's taught classes in pavement design at Bucknell University, at University of Illinois. He's conducted numerous research projects for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. He's acted as a consultant to several national and international highway and airport agencies. He's authored a textbook on pavement evaluation. And indeed, Dr. Shaheen has distinguished himself in this field for many, many years. In 1991, he was the Federal Engineer of the Year, and that's all across the United States. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our consultant, Dr. Mohammed Shaheen.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start by acknowledging the two main engineers that worked with me on the study, Steve Chan, and Ricardo Vilcorta from Department of General Services. You do have handouts of all the transparencies that we will be showing, so okay, the study was scientifically conducted. We have selected a relatively large sample of city streets. We had 50 major streets, 50 local streets, and by the way, I'm on page 1 of the handouts that you have. We covered all age groups of streets in the city, and we had about 7 streets from each age group, 0 to 2, 3 to 5, etc., for a total of about 50 sections that are major and 50 that are local streets. The way we conducted the study, we selected 2 adjacent inspection units, each about 2,500 square feet, or approximately 1 lane, 200 feet long. One of the inspection units had utility cuts and the other did not. We used 2 primary techniques. One is called the Pavement Condition Index, or PCI, that measure the pavement surface condition and integrity on a score from 0 to 100. We also use a structural evaluation device called the falling weight deflectometer, as well as scoring and conducting soil penetration resistance. What I would like to do first is explain the techniques very briefly, and then I will share with you the results that we obtained. The first technique, which is known as the Pavement Condition Index, is based on a visual survey of all failures in the street. And we have a standard manual that's adopted nationwide. And once we identify the types of failures, how severe they are, how much they are, we have models that translate that to a score from 0 to 100. 100 being excellent, 0 being failed. The PCI does agree with the collective judgment of maintenance engineers. And I would like to share with you some typical examples of different PCI levels so we get a feel for that. Here is a pavement where the PCI was calculated to be 90. There's a slight traveling weathering on the left, difficult to see with the slide, but that's why it was reduced to 90. Here is a pavement where the PCI is in the yellow zone or the critical zone, it's 58. And part of the reason is the utility cut patching that's in the street. Here is one with a structural failure. What you see on the left part of the photograph, there is what we call alligator cracking. This is definitely load related, and the PCI was reduced to 15. So that was the first technique we used. So we evaluated both pavements with cuts and without cuts using that technique. The second technique we used was called the falling weight deflectometer. And in this device, let's have the previous one, Steve, please. Okay. And I'm going to stand up point here. If you look at the plate right in
Would
there.
you lift the micro?
Sorry.
It comes loose. You can.
It does come, okay, great.
I think so.
That's fine. I can do it from here. You see the plate right here. There is a mass that drops on that plate. These here are sensors that measure the movement of the pavement. I'm going to show some more details of that. Next slide, please, Steve. Here you go. This is the actual mass right here that drops on the plate below. Next slide. And here's the plate right here. And these are the sensors that measure the movement of the pavement in units of 1/1000th of an inch. Good. Inside the vehicle that pulls that falling weight deflectometer is a computer that records the deflection of the pavement. Next slide, please. This is really what we are measuring right here. Here is the plate. Here is the force that drops. When we do that, we create what we call a deflection basin. And the deflection right under the center of the plate is what's referred to as a maximum deflection. As you might expect, if you have a strong pavement, that deflection will not be very large. If you have a weak pavement, that deflection will be large. Okay. The way we conducted the test, we did structural measurements away from the patch. This is a green location right here, at least 10 feet away from the patch. We did testing, this is a plate from the device. We did testing right at the edge of the pavement, at the edge of the patch, as well as the center of the patch. The third thing we did was coring. And when we cored the inside the patch as well as in the pavement. So really, what I would like for you to look at in this diagram is only the right portion, which is right here, showing you the core results away from the patch. In this case, we have a pavement that has an asphalt thickness of 7 inches. And now we look at the left side. We found out when they patched, they came back with 1.8 inches or less than 2 inches instead. Another test we have done is called the standard penetration test. What that test is a very simple test actually, where we drop a weight several times and we measure the movement of a spoon, split spoon, and how many drops it takes to move the spoon 1 foot is a measure of the resistance of the soil. In the patch itself, it took 9 times to move it 1 foot. In the pavement, it took 14 times. So what it amounts to, we have a weaker foundation as well as a thinner surface. These results were found over and over throughout the study. So another example. Again, compare the thickness of the asphalt to the right, about 8 inches versus 5 inches. Okay, next slide. Here's one that went from like 12 inches to 3 inches. All right. We'll skip that one. All right. Well, I would like to share with you now some of the results. These are the techniques we used, and these streets you may associate with. Okay, this is Glendale Street. No, that's, okay, very good, Steve, thanks. The age of that pavement is 1 year old. The PCI is 100 without any patching, okay? Now here we have the patch in a street that's about 1 year old, and the PCI dropped to 98. what we have noticed in that street as well, that again, the asphalt concrete in the pavement was 9 inches. So if you look at the core, which is core B, which is in the pavement, we found out the thickness of the asphalt to be 9 inches. Inside the pavement, inside the patch, I'm sorry, which is core labeled the A in the view graph, we found out the thickness to be 4 inches. The foundation support in the pavement, it took 26 drops to move the spoon 12 inches. In the patch, it took half of that. So we have tremendously weakened foundation. The deflection testing with our devices was another ratio of 1.5 times. So any way you look at it, was a terrible patch. Okay. This is 9th Street, 14 years old. PCI is 91. It's a very good pavement. PCI is 76 of the same street because of patches. Now, in this pavement, I would like us to make a point here on that one, if we go back to this, Steve. In this case, the actual thickness of the patch was even inch thicker than the surrounding pavement. Well, that's good news, except the deflection in the patch was still twice as high as the deflection outside the patch. What does that tell us is, even if we go back with the same thickness, we have caused damage to the pavement. Okay, next slide, please. Sherman Way is 18 years old, PCI of 86 without patching, PCI of 69, and it's obvious why it's 69, due to patching. Holt Avenue, 5 years old, PCI of 80 versus 64. Again, in all of these, the deflection in the patch or around the patch was twice as much or more than the surrounding pavement. Last example here I will share with you is Farmdale Avenue, 25 years old. PCI would have been 56. Instead, it's 45. And I would like to see, I would like, if you can see around that patch, see the radiating cracks from the corners of the patch. Okay. Okay, I'm going to move faster a little bit here, faster to wrap this up. Basically, from the deflection testing, the green is deflection in the pavement, which is much lower than the yellow or the red, which is around the patch and around the edge. Next one, please. In terms of overlay thickness requirement, when we resurface the streets, for major streets without utility cuts, the average required thickness is about 3 inches. Because of utility cuts, we need over 5 inches. For local streets, but similar finding. Next slide, please. In terms of pavement life, it translates to 25 years economic life, average economic life for major streets without patches versus 16.5 with patches. For local streets, 34 versus 28. The reason you have more of a drop in the major street is because of the heavier traffic, as you might expect. Okay? We translated all of that into cost to the city, and that was based on the overlay requirements, the maintenance hole alignments, and profiling that goes along with the repairs. And in summary, what we found out is that the green is what would cost without patching for major streets versus the red with patching. Next slide, Steve, please. The bottom line is, for major streets, there is an extra cost to the city of $12.9 million. For local streets, $3.5 million. Okay. I have some other pictures. And throughout the study, again, was very scientific. The samples were very randomly selected scientifically. We did not intend to look for bad patches. These are typical patches, not in the study, however, that more represent what we saw out there. Go ahead, Steve. And this is actually a telecommunication patching in Grand Avenue. And if you can see that, there are several patches throughout that street, about 5 or 6 of them.
Dr. Shaheen, my colleagues are getting restless.
I'm sorry, okay.
Could we hear from Mr. Montgomery? Is there a statement that you want to make to wrap this up?
I would like to wrap it with the very last 3 slides. Steve, would you please do that? I just want to summarize for you, basically.
And colleagues, this is very important information. It would behoove all of us to pay attention to what he's saying.
Okay. No, the very last 3 I gave you, Steve, after the meeting. Just a very summary at the end. Thank you. I want to summarize by saying I have been doing a study similar to this for over 10 years. I want to share with you some of the results. You are not the only one to get these results. In Burlington, Vermont, in '86, we found similar results. Life reduction from 19.8 to 12 years. Cost to the city was over $500,000 per year. This is a small town of about 80 miles. Next slide, please. Phoenix, Arizona in 1990, life reduction from 20 years to 15 and a half years. Next slide. And in LA, of course, here, similar results from 25 to 16 and a half. So this is not the first time we do a study like this. The results are very consistent, and they show the same conclusions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shaheen, and the information that he provided us in committee, colleagues, just clearly demonstrated what we're up against with these street cuts. Mr. Montgomery, would you address some of the legal aspects of it as far as what the city attorney found?
Yes, Mr. Steinberg in his presentation or at the beginning of the hearing indicated a question as to whether this ordinance would be applicable to city departments and indicated that approximately 60% of the work done in the streets are done by city departments. I believe that number is fairly accurate, and that is it is approximately 60%, but the ordinance is applicable to them and will charge the sewer system, Department of Water and Power, and any other city department that does work in the streets, with the exception of the Bureau of Street Maintenance. That exception being because that is their charge to repair the streets, and it didn't seem to be make a whole lot of sense to apply this where the department is in fact in the process of doing repairs. The issues brought up by the Southern California Gas Company relate to their contention that they are exempt under the unique language of their franchise, which was granted in 1992, I believe it was. Our office has conceded all along that the language in their franchise is appreciably different than any other franchise which the city has granted to a public utility. It is not, however, so clear from the language of their franchise or from my discussions with people who were involved contemporaneously with the negotiation of that deal, that it was intended or that the language does in fact exempt them from this sort of fee. So we recognize that their language is different, and we recognize the argument they made, but on balance we are not prepared at this time, nor have we been at any time, to say that they are, as a matter of law, exempt under the language of their franchise.
Thank you very much, Mr. Montgomery and Dr. Shaheen. Colleagues, the street cut fee was a major underpinning of the budget that we passed last year, and it passed with our votes. It has taken this long to get back to council for full action, and I cannot emphasize to you too much the detriment in which our budget stands today. I would also suggest to you that Dr. Shaheen has made very plain through his studies that our streets are caused to deteriorate very much faster by the cuts into them, and in some neighborhoods, we probably all get complaints. My street was just resurfaced, and now somebody's out here digging in it already. And I think the time has come that we need to recognize this. We're not the first city to have recognized it and had to assess this fee. Mr. James Colbert, the attorney for the gas company, is indeed known to me, and is indeed known to me as an attorney with whom I'd rather stand next to as opposed to across from. But that's the way it goes. We do hope that the city attorney and the attorneys for the gas company can come to some amicable resolution of this problem. But whether they do or do not, that is not the question here this morning. The question here this morning is whether we're going to pass this fee because we passed it without having any other information in the budget document. It was written into the budget document, and it is a policy change, and we should have flagged it at that time and discussed it as a policy. We did not do that. We passed the budget in its entirety with this as a major underpinning of the assumptions that were contained in that budget. So, council members, I urge a unanimous vote on this today. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, members of council, we have a lot of members who wish to speak. We've had a pretty thorough presentation. Let me hold each of the time then to the 3 minutes. I have Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Holden, Mr. Hernandez, Mr. Burnson, Ms. Golaner, Ms. Misakowski, and Mr. Fuhrer. Chair recognizes Councilman Alarcon.
Council members, as the chair of Public Works Committee, I went through this entire presentation in committee, and so I've been close to this subject for quite some time. I don't think anybody disputes the appropriateness of having some kind of street deterioration fee, nor does anybody or should anybody dispute the facts as presented by the consultant. The problem I have is that the way that the fee has been presented to you, it assumes that everybody does bad work. Basically, they took an average of the negative cost factors related to the work that is performed by all these different companies, including our own DWP. And then they take what they call the average deterioration, and they create a fee based on that average deterioration. Well, I've got to tell you that this same consultant in committee said, when I asked, that there is a wide range of quality from the various performers who do the cuts. In other words, some companies do very good work, and they'll put 12 inches of asphalt if that's what it calls for, and other companies are doing very shoddy work, putting 4 inches of concrete in that same kind of cut. The problem that I have is that this way assumes that everybody's going to do average work. And what that means is that it's going to drive those companies who do good work to do average work because there's absolutely no interest in them doing good work. So I think it's going to cause further deterioration, and I think that we need, and I asked these people before I left the chairmanship of Public Works to come back with an option that would incentivize quality work, which I think is the goal, that would ensure that this fee is going to be spent on the street, because the way it's proposed right now, there's no guarantee that this money is going to end up fixing our streets. So I think it's very, very important that we look at this from the perspective of quality of work. That for those companies that do good work, we recognize that, and we should charge double for those companies that do bad work. I'm all for that. I think we should charge them double if they do bad work. And we should do that regardless of the fee. We should just charge them more if it costs more to repair their bad work. But that proposal never emerged from this department, and I'm very disappointed that we're back to where we were for the last year and a half with an average, a peanut butter approach to solving a problem that is very diverse. You can't solve this problem that way. We've got to incentivize quality work, and we do that by charging those who do bad work more, and those who do good work get the incentive of paying less. And so I would urge you to send this. I understand Councilmember Alatorre, who is not here today, is very interested in reviewing it from that perspective in budget and finance. Clearly, it's in his interest to generate the revenue. And it's in all our interests, I think, to generate revenue to repair our streets if we can. But it is not in our long-term interest to generate revenue at the expense of accelerating the deterioration in our streets into the future. And I believe wholeheartedly that if we create this fee, that's what we're going to be doing.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
Oh, you want this to go back to committee? I have to vote against you. The fact of the matter is that we do have an expert here, and that's what we pay him for, is to give us the accurate information. And the fact of the matter is that, notwithstanding all that you have said and what would be said here today and what people think, the sum total is the taxpayers is paying the deficit for street maintenance. If you don't believe it, you ask anybody that you represent, and they'll take notice of the fact that a street has been, you have a major reconstruction of a street, in addition to resurfacing, and 1 month later some utility come along and dig it up. And then when the next rain comes, you have the potholes. It's why are you doing it this way? The fact of the matter is that they have a franchise where they can do it, as they say. But that doesn't mean they compensate us for the cost of having a depreciating, early depreciation of the street. Now, the expert has already said that is a scientific approach. It's called a fallen weight deflectometer. Okay? And what's it called? And it penetrates and tells just how much, what the life expectancy of that soil or that surface will be. I hope you understood what he was saying up there. All right, you don't have to echo me every time because you take up my time. But I will say this. I had a dispute with the mayor, now you all know that, over the Prop C funds to be used to resurface streets. I thought it should be used for which we thought we collected it for. But I'm going to stand here today and say that the more I see these streets resurfaced that have been neglected over the years and been adversely affected and deteriorated because of the cuts, I got to tell you, he's right on that issue. And I'm willing to, the money is being spent in a cost-effective way. Now I got to tell you, we should not let those guys get away with cutting up our streets. Just where I live in the district. They resurfaced the street, utilities came in, dug a trench along the sidewalk, and walked away, left it where they didn't make the surface flush of about 3 inches lack of being flush, which just, they didn't do a good job. They don't have to do a good job. All they want to know is they have a franchise to do it. That's not your point. The point is that no matter what you say, you can't do it on a case-by-case basis in an ordinance. You can't do it on a case-by-case basis in an ordinance. You have to have an average, something that can withstand a court test. And that's all they're talking about. I support the city attorney. I support this ordinance. I support this fee. And the public does also. They're tired of seeing their roads cut up at their expense.
Chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Falling weight what you call that, deflectometer? I'd like to ask the expert or the engineer if he could help us a little bit. Does that tell you the deterioration of streets because of street usage? The number of vehicles using it per hour, per day?
It tells us the structural capacity of that road to carry vehicles, and we use theoretical analysis, after engineering analysis after that to calculate allowable number of vehicles till failure and all the other questions, yes.
So it does tell us that?
Yes, sir, it does.
So then we can use that same machine to readjust the formula for our street maintenance funds in the city. Because right now we basically spend our money according to street miles as opposed to street usage. Is that correct?
There's a proposal coming to council that will deal with the reallocation of street resurfacing funds based on need.
Okay, based on need, based on usage.
Yes, based on usage, that should be before council soon.
Okay. Now, members, I want you to understand that because part of the problem we've had on our streets, particularly in the inner city, has been that certain council districts, for example, that had 17% of the streets got 17% of that budget. Another district that might have 5% got 5%. So it had nothing to do with how many cars used them. And if you travel down North Broadway or if you travel down, get off the freeway on Chinatown, a lot of cars use those streets on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of the deterioration you're seeing is because of that. And I want us to keep that in mind because that's a very important issue from my perspective in terms of my streets and some of the streets that were shown up here. You see, the question I have in regards to this program is one Mr. Montgomery did not really answer for us. Mr. Montgomery, are you saying the gas company has to sue us so that we can get an opinion as to our franchise language? Or do you honestly believe that that separate fee for them to pay for the franchise to cut the streets doesn't apply?
There will need to be, if the gas company wishes to pursue the matter, there will need to be further discussions. I'm not suggesting that it would require litigation to do it, but that is one vehicle to resolve
why has
the
that
issue.
discussion not happened prior to it coming before this council?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Why has not that discussion been happening prior to this coming to this council?
There has been a great deal of discussion, and it is unresolved at this point in time.
Well,
It's resolved to our satisfaction that the language of their franchise is not sufficiently clearly exempt them to say that they are exempt.
Okay. Now, so does the Water and Power have a franchise agreement like that?
They don't have a franchise per se. They will be subject to the ordinance.
But now that they'll be deregulated, will they be required to have a franchise?
No.
Okay. How about the cable companies? They do have a franchise?
Any franchise or any public utility which is not required under state law to obtain a franchise will, notwithstanding, have to receive a permit and pay the fee.
So under deregulation, what you're saying is...
Time.
Yeah, okay, I'll press my button again, Mr. President, but last question. Under deregulation, what you're saying is that the Department of Water and Power will not have a franchise fee.
They will not have a franchise per se. They will be required to obtain an A or B permit as applicable and pay the fee at the time of the obtaining of that permit.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair recognizes Councilman Bernson.
See, that's my point.
You know, members of the council, while I support the intent of this ordinance, there are some flaws in it. The two main flaws that I see are, number one, that it's tax generation oriented. Number two, that it doesn't really address the problem of making sure that those repairs are done properly the first time, and a follow-up on the part of the city to make sure that happens. Because frequently, we get these things that linger on for a long period of time, and those repairs are not done until we finally take an action and force them to come back and do it. Well, that's just part of the problem. It seems to me that the two main intents of this, the main intent of this, ought to make sure that there is a coordination to eliminate these cuts as much as possible. And I don't know if that's being done in the department or whether the utilities are following up with this or not. But the second thing is to make sure that the repairs are done correctly and quickly the first time. And I'm going to make a suggestion, because I don't think we're going to act on this today. I think that there ought to be a requirement for anybody that does a street cut to post a bond to make sure that that work is done properly, and that we sign off on that when the work is inspected by DOT or street maintenance, whoever's going to do the work on that, to sign off on that. I guess it would be DOT. It wouldn't be street maintenance. And the bond would be released at that time if the work is done satisfactorily. Now, as far as any additional charge, I'm sure there is some additional wear and tear on the street that causes the demise of the length of period, the duration the street will hold up as a result of some of these cuts, regardless of how well the repair is done. If we're going to charge anything, it ought to be in addition to the complete revamping of the street to the level and where it was before, but the additional charge should go into a trust fund that cannot be used for budgetary purposes, but can be used only to maintain the streets. I'm not interested in placing another tax on business or anybody else that's simply going to be to solve our budgetary problems. That's not the reason, and I don't believe we can make the nexus for that. I suggest that everybody, including the gas company, Department of Water Power, anybody that cuts into our streets must post a bond to be responsible, and that we have a immediate inspection as soon as they're done with their work to make sure that the work is done satisfactorily. And if we're going to have whatever we can determine as a cost of further deterioration of the street as a result of that work, that money must go into a trust fund. And I can't support this the way it is today. I don't want to vote against it, but I think that it needs to be readdressed with some of the things that I've raised today.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Galanter.
Has this been through Budget and Finance?
Not specifically. It was part of the 96, 97, and 97, 98 budget discussions for the ad hoc.
So it
Budget
was
Finance.
discussed by the ad hoc committee, but there hasn't been a formal action by Budget and Finance. Okay, thank you. Here's the concern I have. I agree with what Mr. Bernsen just said about the concerns we ought to have of trying to balance the budget by taking money from one department under the guise of something else. But I also understand that we do have a problem about the streets. When we were trying to redo Venice Boulevard, we went to all the utilities we could think of and said, please do your plans before we pave the street. We're going to pave the street, but we'd like you to get all your work done. And I assume everybody acted in good faith, but some of them weren't ready to make a decision yet. So some of them did. We were able to do it in order, and we were able then to put the thing down. And sure enough, somebody came along later and said, well, now we're ready, and now we need to tear it up. So, this might be a way to create a stronger incentive for better coordination, but it's still going to mean that somebody's going to have to do all that coordination, and it's probably going to wind up being street maintenance, and I don't know whether you're really equipped to do that on top of what you already do. The concern that I have, and the reason I asked about Budget and Finance, is that I want to be sure we know where the money that city agencies in particular are going to have to pay for this is going to come out of. If we're talking about wastewater or DWP, they've prepared budgets which I don't think have a lot of fat in them. In DWP's case, they're trying to focus everything on reducing the debt so that the ongoing cost to run the department is less. In wastewater, they have a lot of work to do taking care of the wastewater. And there will be other city agencies as well. So I think the concern that I have, which is probably best analyzed in the Budget and Finance Committee, is what is going to be the implication of imposing this fee on other aspects of the city program. And I'll just give you one other example. For the last 4 years, we've been robbing funds that in the city in order to do things that we didn't have enough money to do without stealing from the other funds. And the Stormwater Pollution Abatement Fund is my particular pet peeve. We've been using what's supposed to be for cleaning up the stormwater before it hits the ocean, which is one of our big tourist assets, to sweep streets and to do a whole bunch of other things that are all worthy things to do, but aren't really what that money was collected for. So I do think before we impose the fee, whose objectives make very good sense to me, that we ought to know, at least for our own departments, what is it we're giving up, and what will it mean to give that up before we impose the fee. And I am not proposing, by the way, that we impose it on everybody else and not on the city departments. So I think this really ought to go through Budget and Finance for that kind of an analysis before the council votes on it in final form.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
Members of the council, I rise to corroborate what the chair of the Public Works Committee indicated, and that is that we went through an intensive study on this, and I think Councilman Alarcon indicated that he had done the same as chair of the Public Works Committee previously. I don't think we ought to lose focus of what's before us. Street cuts, no matter how well they are done or how poorly they are done, shorten the life of the street. That's what the essence of this says. Should there be a differential in fee? Perhaps. But I think there's nothing wrong, and in fact, I would strongly urge the council to move forward today. We've been discussing this. It's been on the council since 1996 in Public Works Committee and been part of budget considerations since that time. Listen to what it's called, a Street Damage Restoration Fund. We know there's street damage. You can tear a piece of fabric, you can repair it, but it's never going to be as good as where that tear occurred. That's what this recognizes. Ought we to adjust it? Ought we to look at good cuts and bad cuts? Perhaps. Perhaps an adjustment can come later. But there's nothing wrong. In fact, I think it's imperative that we move forward on this. I don't know about the other members of the council, but as I go out throughout the district, streets and sidewalk repair, the deferred maintenance in this city, has become the #1 priority that I hear about. We are not doing enough. We clearly, this report, as I said, Dr. Shaheen is an expert, an engineer, scientifically equipped. He showed us that with formulas and facts and figures. But it doesn't take a scientist. It takes common sense. We are falling further and further behind, and we've got to recognize that it's an essential failure that occurs as a consequence of the right to go in and cut the street. People pay the franchise fees for the rights to enter our streets, but beyond that, there is something that we are not recovering, and I think we ought to recover it. I have no problem with doing the other studies in terms of the related costs, how it's going to impact and affect other departments, but making our street restoration a #1 priority and adopting this fee and going forward with this ordinance today, I think makes imminent sense. We are losing millions of dollars a year in that further deterioration of our streets compared to streets that don't have cuts. Ought we to do a better job on coordination? Absolutely. Ought we perhaps consider some alteration and restructuring of the fee at a later point? I have no problem with that. But I think we should go forward with the essence of the fee, adopt this report today, say that the council means to do it. It's being done by other cities throughout the state and throughout the country. I think further deferral at this time is an adverse consequence that this city council ought not to undertake.
That recognizes Councilman Fuhrer.
Thank you. I'm going to assume the applause was for what Ms. Okowski just said rather than for what I'm about to say, but we'll see. Good, thank you. I and almost everybody on this council voted for this not once but twice in the course of our budget deliberations. And we did so very mindful of the fiscal implications if we failed to include it in that package. It was $10 million annually of revenue that we were counting on. And so, in many ways, having voted for the darn thing twice, I am predisposed to do it again. But I do have some questions that continue to nag at me and actually make me even more ambivalent now. First of all, Ms. Mizikowski makes a very important point that I think all of us can agree with, and the presentation really underscores. If you cut into the street, it damages the street. And what follows from that, one could argue, is we need to somehow get a source of funds with which to restore the street that has been damaged. The problem, however, with that logic is we are not proposing through this to dedicate X amount of funds, $10 million, to actually restore the street. In fact, it is highly likely that the money will go into the general fund, other needs will have been identified, and it won't necessarily end up back here. It is not dedicated to this purpose. It is a general fund allocation. You're saying no, Jerry, but it has always, in the two budget deliberations we've gone through, it has been clear it's a general fund, these are general fund dollars.
That may have been the discussion during the budgetary process, but the structure in one of the ordinances you have before you today is to establish a special fund entitled the Street Damage Restoration Fee, which is dedicated to these purposes.
I'm going to lose time, so let's go down that path. Let's assume that that's true for a second. One key reason for doing this, maybe the essential reason, was not just the philosophy that was enunciated here, but rather we need the money, too. And here's a way to do it that is justifiable. Now, right now, if we were to implement this fee, take a vote today to do it, we don't get $10 million this year, we get about $3 million this year. We already lost 10 last year, to be clear, and we lose 7 this year. So we still have a deficit for this year attributed to this line in the budget. If we actually dedicate the funds to performing an action the city currently does not perform, and that is to go in and strengthen the streets that have been cut, that $3 million in change actually will not go to balancing the budget, and therefore the revenue shortfall will be even greater than what we had anticipated if we were to vote on it today. So either one way or the other. And again, this gives me some pause. I'm not sure how I'm going to vote. I'm just trying to analyze the thing in a way that makes some sense. The arguments that, among others, Ms. Galanter has made most recently about the source of funds and in the stormwater, for example, I am concerned about taking a dedicated source of funds, one that was levied for a precise purpose, stormwater, to clean up the bay, essentially, and reallocate those funds to this purpose, which is one result. 7% of the money that we would obtain would be about $1 million from a fund which, by the way, we are told is going to be short of funds in this very line imminently, like in the next year or two. Ms. Galanter makes a good point about what it really means to the city taxpayer to draw these funds from DWP and other places, because at a minimum, if we siphon these funds from DWP, it means these are not available funds with which to supplement our budget through the surplus transfer that has been engaged in since time began. So the philosophy of this, I buy, streets deteriorate, we need to make sure they get back in shape. If we adopt the dedicated approach, we don't get the fiscal benefit for budget balancing purposes that led many of us to vote for the thing in the first place. I think that having at least one more shot in budget and finance, given all this, makes some sense. I can still be persuaded to support it, but some arguments are made that have some force against it.
Chair, Councilman Alarcon is on the phone. Let me go to Mr. Burnson and come back to you if you want. Chair recognizes Councilman Burnson.
I don't have any problem with supporting a deterioration fee. I think we're entitled to that. I would like to place a friendly amendment. I understand the gas company, who has a franchise agreement, already posts what is it, 500, what is the amount, Mr. Ware? $500,000 bond. I don't know if that's for citywide, I don't know if it's adequate or whatever the case may be. But I would like to amend this to state that all curb cuts must be accompanied by a bond or cash deposit to cover the potential cost of the repairs, and that this shall be returned or released upon inspection within a very short period of time by street maintenance to determine the work has been done properly. That's something that I am really concerned about. So I will place that as a friendly amendment. And I've prepared, I already understand this is going to be in a separate fund, so it'll be used for restoration. That's fine with me, so I don't have to make that amendment because I raised that before. And with that, if the amendment is adopted, then I will support the ordinance today.
Chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
You know, what some of you don't understand, I think, is that the integrity of the surface of the streets are sacrificed, adversely affected when this cutting is done. It really is. And if you've seen it with your own eyes, you got to know it exists. This is something that we voted on before, and I got to, you know, you have to address the need to amend the budget due to the shortfall. The monies that we use now to fill these potholes or resurface the streets is really coming from the general fund. And that general fund is going to realize a greater shortfall. Some of this work cannot wait until this ordinance is adopted, and did not wait. It had to be done then. And I just can't understand for the life of me why there should be any hesitation on saying let's get it done. After all, the average citizen out there, and to Joe Wax, I say voter, understands that they're the ones who's paying for the job that's not being done, and they're the ones who are paying for the streets that are being cut up and not being properly repaired. Mr. Burnson's motion, I have no problem with that motion, put up a bond. But that means that when we go out and do the drop test on these repair jobs, if it's not properly done, then we go back to the guy and say, you didn't do a good job, and now you got to do it properly. We have to make sure our inspectors are out there. That costs money. And they will be paid out of this fund. Otherwise, where are the inspectors coming from? Well, now they paid out of the general fund. And that's not so difficult for us to understand. There's nothing complicated about that. You're right, Mr. Bernstein. I'm supporting you. I second your motion.
No, can I have a second just to answer that? When they take out the permit for the curb cut or for the street cut, it should cover the cost of the inspection.
The permit fee will have to be increased to cover the cost of inspection, the cost of testing, and the cost of
Sure.
coordination.
All that has to be increased. Look, this cannot wait any longer. I thank you for your amendment. I thank you for your offer of support if the item is to be amended, and let's go forward.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Galanter, seconds time.
Right, just so there's no ambiguity, I want to make a formal motion that this be referred to Budget and Finance. And the reason that I'm doing that is that I think we are, I've got a couple, the more I listen to this, the more problems I have. If we set this aside in a special fund, that's good for street repair, but it's not good for balancing the budget, which is part of the reason for doing this in the first place. If we use it for balancing the budget, it'll be paying for things other than street repair, and the gas company and others have a legitimate concern about that. So I think that despite the fact that this has been discussed for however long Ms. Mizikowski said it's been discussed, there's some holes in it that need to be fixed before we do this. And I can just see the city departments who aren't doing other things they were going to do with the money they're now going to spend for fees, trying to explain to the people who depend on them why they can't get other things done because, let us say, you're the agency that sets electric rates, charges for electricity, and, well, no, we can't reduce your rates any further because we're paying to fix your streets. I don't think, even though the public wants the streets fixed and also wants lower electric rates, I don't think that's an easy sell. And I think that the people whose money it is deserve to know exactly where that money's going. And if it's just going to balance the budget, I'm not sure that everybody thinks that's so cool. If it's going to balance the budget, it's not going into special fund to fix the streets. So somebody's got to make up our collective mind here, and I don't think we have enough information. So I did. I do, yes. I also need a bunch of votes.
Chair recognizes Ms. Walters.
Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the concerns expressed around the council table and take responsibility for one bit of confusion that's here about where the money is going and how it will be used. I said it helps to balance the budget, and I did, but it's an indirect process. The money that is utilized for the street cut fees will go to the restoration fund that will be used exclusively for street maintenance, which relieves them of using general fund monies currently for repairing the streets. So then it frees up general fund money to do other things that we expect the general fund to do. And I apologize for that bit of confusion. But I also think that we've not all heard what Dr. Shaheen has indicated and what Ms. Mizikowski indicated, that any cut, no matter how well repaired, is deleterious to the life of the street and cuts into that rather dramatically. And so those are the points at issue here, council members, and I would urge us to vote today on this street deterioration fee.
All right. For the first time, the chair recognizes Councilman Savornich. Mr. Savornich is moving the previous question.
I asked for a no vote.
Wait just a minute. Okay, hold the order of the speakers in case we don't pass the previous
no
question. Open the roll on the previous question. Close the roll.
8 ayes, 5
That
no.
doesn't pass. Ms. Goldberg hasn't spoken for the first time, and the chair is going to recognize Councilwoman Goldberg.
I actually was quite content to send this to committee until you actually said what you said, because I wasn't sure how I felt about a fee that was for fixing streets being used for other things. But I think that's very important to me. I think that we need a fee to fix the streets. You know, we're in the unenviable position of having had, like all other cities in the state of California, funds that used to be city money captured by the state, but the demand for services doesn't reduce. Just because the state takes money away from the cities and the counties, it doesn't mean that people who live in cities and counties expect fewer services. And nobody likes to raise fees or impose fees, particularly on agencies that we've done business with so well and so long, utilities. There's no animus here about this. But I was concerned about exactly what you cleared up, which was I wasn't sure I was ready to impose a fee to balance the budget as much as we need to balance the budget. However, if this money really is going to fix the problem or attempt to fix the problem that's being generated for, then I really don't have any problem for doing this now. I really don't at all, because I don't see how we get streets fixed if we don't impose on our own departments and on everybody else who's deteriorating them some fee that will get them fixed. We don't have that many choices anymore. Was a time when you could discuss a general revenue increase that would go to take care of all kinds of problems. Now, basically, we're really talking about fees for service. And if every cut, no matter how well done, hurts the life of the streets, and we have every reason, and I've read the report, I even met with the gentleman in my office about some of this, if we have every reason to scientifically believe that is in fact a fact, if the attorney tells us that this does not interfere with franchises because it was not a part of the discussions at the time that franchise was negotiated, then I don't think we have any choice, and waiting isn't going to make this easier. I think we need to just do it, and do it because the money will go where it is supposed to go, which is to fixing the streets that deteriorate due to these kinds of cuts.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick.
Just a very focused question as this decision-making has narrowed down. How are you going to designate that the funds, how the funds are used? You know, like what streets they're going to be used for?
Well, that is not addressed in the particular ordinance in response to the other issues, and that is one of the matters before you is an ordinance to establish this fee, and specifically under that ordinance, the uses of that money is as follows. The funds shall be used only for street surfacing, resurfacing, repair and reconstruction, and laboratory fees, testing, materials, engineering, salaries, and overhead associated therewith. But this does not address any change in the procedure used by the Street Maintenance Bureau to determine which streets are going to be
But it's sacredly set aside for that purpose and that purpose only.
and allocated periodically by this council by ordinance.
And I assume in terms of deciding which streets that by this time we probably have very few streets left that haven't had cuts and multiple cuts, and therefore in effect we're doing repairs on streets that have lost life because of various and numerous street cuts.
Yes, if you look at the history of street cuts, almost every major street within the first 5 years of its life have been cut. Almost every local street within the first 6 years of its life has been cut. And so it's very easy to say that these funds will be used on streets that have suffered because of street cuts.
Okay, well, colleagues, I am going to, although I seconded my colleague Councilmember Galanter's motion, I do think the biggest part of my concern on the issue of how this money was going to be spent has been addressed, and I am going to be comfortable voting for this today. I know that in my many conversations with the Director of Street Maintenance Bureau, it is so clear that in fact we are spending more taxpayer dollars than we should be because we are allowing our streets to get so far advanced in their deterioration that it is costing a great deal more. And This sounds as though it's going to be a very fair way of collecting fee-for-service and finding more cost-effective ways to keep our streets in better shape. So, thank you.
Chair recognizes Councilman Hernandez.
Yeah, no, and I find a need to remind Ms. Chick that when we talk about the formula in terms of street usage, you also find that fair way to vote. You know, one of the things I need to point out to you, and one of the reasons I'm having a problem is I'm inclined to also want to support the fee. I'm just not ready for it. And the reason I'm not ready for it is a variety of reasons. And I want you all to understand, as this city is going through its transition in economic development, as the city is doing its work, what this fee is talking about doing. After the civil unrest, I was able to bring back a lot of the commercial corridor along the Pico Boulevard area. And the reason it happened is we focused on the infrastructure. We focused on the sewer lines, we focused on basically working on a lot of the gas lines, the kinds of things that needed to be replaced. And what it did is it made it cheaper for development to come in, because they weren't being put all the requirements the city was putting on. It made it easier for me to bring back those corridors. There were other parts of the city where that didn't happen after the civil unrest. The same kind of stuff was happening after the earthquake. You see, when you talk about the rail system and subways and so forth, the reality is, as those funds are running out and decisions are being made, where do you complete the projects, we're talking about the pavement of our streets. See, when I'm asking the question about cable and franchises, I'm asking the question about the internet and the reality that all these lines that are going in our streets. And do we treat the gas company different from everybody else? Or do we treat the Department of Water and Power that's being deregulated different from everybody else? I was really disappointed in Mr. Montgomery's response, because that question should be answered. Because one of the things this current budget is dealing with is a bond issuance of $50 million because of a court case. How many court cases have we lost where we had to pay back the money that we as a council decided we should charge anyway? Here's a question that we could clearly have answered before we adopt this, or negotiate it before we adopt it. But we should know what we're voting on. We shouldn't be voting on it because we think it's going to fix our streets. And the reason our streets are in the condition they're in is because of usage, is because of economic development, is because of the lot of transition the city's going through. And so I also will vote for this to go to Budget and Finance, just so that there's a little more consideration taken. I think the fee is a good idea. I'm not sure this ordinance addresses the questions the way they should be addressed. And so that's my position on this issue, members, and hopefully we could just buy a little bit more time so that we could look at it a little bit closer. I know that I have corridors in my district, and economic development is going to depend on the cost of the infrastructure development. And I know that a lot of us come in here asking for fee waivers when it comes to economic development.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Miskowski.
Members of the council, I don't think we can afford to delay. This is costing us, by our scientific study, $16.4 million a year, $1.4 million a month. I think some of the questions that have been raised by the council in addressing this further are legitimate, but that's not a reason to delay. It's a reason to adopt this today, let Budget and Finance analyze some of the issues as to what and how this might affect the budget overall, what and how this might affect some of those various departments which are going to now have to pay a fee. Let the street maintenance department address with the council in terms of how the fee is going to be used in terms of priority of streets. We have indicated from Mr. Scott that he's going to be addressing that. He's bringing that report in. Mr. Montgomery says that further discussions are going to occur with a specific franchisee who says that there may or may not be a problem of interpretation and whether that franchise creates an exclusion. Mr. Alarcon has said there should be a differential rate because there might be good cuts and bad cuts. We should do further study and determine that. But there's no reason to not go forward today. Set this in place, make adjustments later as these other agencies, as these other committees address it, adjust it, and accommodate it. But we've acknowledged it. The council has previously acknowledged it. We've got to move forward. It literally is $16.4 million a year that no one disputes. No one refutes the idea that a street cut, no matter how good or how bad, has an impact on the city that we are not now capturing, that we are not now addressing. This addresses it. I think a lot of the other issues are very, very legitimate, but need not be a reason to delay it going forward today.
All right, the chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick. Passes. Ms. Galanter, Councilwoman Galanter.
You know, I may have an old-fashioned attitude about this, but I'd kind of like to know what the consequences are going to be before I vote on something instead of finding out afterwards.
Mr. Holden? Mr. Holden moves the previous question on the entire matter. Open the roll on the previous question. Close the roll.
13 ayes.
All right, the previous question is approved on the entire matter. The first motion would be to refer to committee,
No vote.
which is the Budget and
No vote.
Finance Committee. Open the roll on the motion to refer to the Budget and Finance Committee. Close the roll.
5 ayes, 8 no.
All right, that's not approved. Now, we're going to have Mr. Bernson's amendments. One amendment, do you want to state Mr. Bernson's amendment, Madam Clerk?
Yes, that all the street cuts must be accompanied by a bond or cash deposit to cover the potential cost of repairs and will be returned upon inspection by street maintenance to determine if the work's been done properly.
All right, open the roll on Mr. Bernson's amendment. Close the roll.
11 ayes, 2 no.
That's approved. And now we have the report as amended.
You have the report, the resolution, and the 3 ordinances. I'm not sure which ordinance will be affected by the amendment.
Well, let's first do the report as amended. Open the roll. Close the roll.
12 ayes, 1 no.
All right, that's approved. And now we will have the appropriate ordinance.
There's 3 ordinances and a reso.
Okay, well, we need
the ordinances are going to have to be amended and brought back. I don't think that we can vote on that language now.
Can you, would you be able to do them by the end of council if we laid them on the table? Do you think?
Mr. President,
Yes.
what I would suggest, the nature of the motion as I understood it would be to have amended the report and request a further change, but that particular item doesn't conveniently fit in any of the ordinances currently before you. So
Well, we have voted on the amended report and the resolutions. Now we just have the ordinances before us. So we either can vote on the ordinances before us. Does the ordinance have to address the bond, or is it sufficient to have it in the report? Let me ask the city attorney, Mr. City Attorney, do the ordinances have to be amended to include the bonds, or is it sufficient because we have put that in the committee report? Is that sufficient enough?
Is that sufficient for you? Yeah, because it's going to go on the permit. It's not going to go on this.
As I understand the thrust of Mr. Bernson's motion is that the requirement for the bond relate to the permit, not to the fee itself. And so I believe the ordinance establishing the fee and the ordinance establishing the special fund can go forward without amendment.
All right, then open the roll on...
Wait, point of order. Do we need an ordinance and a separate ordinance to require the bond and the inspection?
Yeah, we will be coming back with the trailer to this report, which is the report dealing with permit fees, coordination,
Okay, in
testing,
the
and
meantime,
inspection.
you will start enacting it immediately, though, right? Till we get, even
Yes.
though we don't have the ordinance in place. I'm willing to
Yes.
go with the committee
Okay.
report, provided I have your commitment on that.
Then open the roll on the ordinance that we have before us.
3 ordinances.
Mr. Montgomery?
Yeah, another option is that one of the ordinances that is before you would be appropriate for this amendment. That is the amendment amending sections 6202 and 6204. We can bring that back for the council in the next week, but there's no reason to delay on the other 2 ordinances, which would not be affected.
All right,
the other 2 ordinances
then
or
why
the
don't
resolution,
we,
which would not be affected.
First of all, let's withhold on the ordinance.
Withhold on the one ordinance and pass the other 2.
And then the other two ordinances we can open the roll on right now. Open the roll on those two remaining ordinances. Close the roll.
10 ayes, 2 no.
All right, those will be back on second reading 1 week from today as well. Okay. That's...
Councilman Fuhrer wants to be recorded as a no vote on the
He was
report
a
as
no vote.
amended.
He was, I believe. All right, that completes the matter for today. Next order, Madam Clerk. Yes, the people at the
I would
table?
just ask the clerk if the action included the adoption of the resolution
Yes.
establishing the fees.
Yes,
Thank
when
you.
we did the committee report as amended with the resolutions. All right, next order, Madam Clerk.
The next items, Mr. President, are items 5 through 12. These are items for which public hearings have been held.
All right, are there any specials, members of council, 5 through 12? Mr. Bernson, do you want to call 11 special?
I was just going to ask some questions on why we need it, but it's my understanding that we really don't use a lot of the money from B13, I guess, or C13. That this money is because of the federal requirements, and I just wonder why we are spending $80,000 for a consultant on something that we don't use a lot.
Well, then why don't we call it special? And
Why don't
we'll
we
get
call
that.
it special?
Okay. Any others, 5 through 12?
Councilmember Chick moves Budget and Finance on item 7 because there were different recommendations submitted.
Yes, I'd like to call it special because
All right, Ms. Goldberg
there are
calls
different
number 7
numbers
special.
for each recommendation.
All
I want
right.
to hear a little more
Are
about
there
it.
any other specials? If not, open the roll then on
5 through 12 with the exception of 7 and 11.
what is numbers? And perhaps someone can also, let's call 5 special, just so someone can clarify what it is, since it involves street vending. Okay, then we have what, item 6? Items 8, 9, 10, and 12. Open the roll, close the roll.
12 ayes.
All right, those are approved.
Mr. President, on 8-9, could that be forthwith?
Without objection, forthwith.
And item 5 was a joint report. Both committees concur with the report.
Okay. Madam Clerk, do we want to take the specials that were called 5 through 12, or do we want to go to the next grouping?
Usually we go to the next section, Mr. President.
All right, then we'll just hold on the tables then, the ones called special.
The next items are 13 through 25. These are items for which public hearings have not been held.
Oh, all right. I don't have any cards, but I will requesting to be heard, but I will ask once more if there's anyone in the audience wishing to address the council on any of the items 13 through 25. Let me first see if there's anyone wishing to speak in the audience. Anyone in the audience wishing to speak on any of those items? If not, the public hearings are closed. Is there any objection to bringing those items in at this time? If not, the matters are before us. Any specials? Ms. Goldberg?
Well, I'd like to ask that 25A be continued to Friday. I had asked staff from CRA who is working on this project to come, and they were unavoidably detained and are not going to make it, so I'd rather wait till they're here and they can be here on Friday.
Just on 25A?
That's all, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, she just called.
All right, without objection, 25A will be continued to Friday, but we can still vote on the others. Mr. Holden calls 24 special.
16, Mr. President, the recommendations differ. You either need a motion for
16
A or
on the-
B.
16 we're going to call special. We're going to need a motion. Any others? Specials 13 through 25? If not, open the roll on 13, 14, 15, 17,
17, 18, 19, 20, 21,
18,
22, 23,
19, 20,
26, and 27.
21, 22, 23, 24, no, not on 24, 25, B through D. Close the roll.
12 ayes.
Those are approved.
14.
Without objection, forthwith on item 14.
Yep. And forthwith on item 15, Mr. President.
Forthwith without objection on item 15. Next order, Madam Clerk.
Closed session items 26 and 27.
Well, we'll hold those until we complete the calendar. Next order.
Item 5 called special.
All right. Is there just someone that could give an explanation as to the substance of item 5? Is there staff here on item 5?
Item 5, excuse me, is merely the ordinances that enable the transfer of the vending enforcement from Public Works to the Community Development Department.
Do they in any way change the substance of the vending program?
No.
Okay.
It's just switching them over.
That was my question. Any other discussion then? In all respects other than that, the program remains the same.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
This is just the transfer.
All right. Then open the roll on number 5. Close the roll.
12 ayes.
That's approved. Next order, Madam Clerk.
Could we be forthwith on 5 also?
Without
Mr. President?
objection, forthwith.
Forthwith, the Mayor. Item 7 called special. Councilmember Goldberg.
Ms. Goldberg, you called item 7 special, and there's going to be a motion required.
This did not come to any committee I sit on, and I can't tell from reading this why there's a difference in the fiscal impact statements between A, B, and C. So I'd like to just hear from, it's about $1 million difference when I add up the numbers, so I'm just trying to figure out what it means. So if
Staff
someone
like to come center table, please.
just explain why I can't
We
find
have-
$1 million, I'd be ever so happy.
You want to respond to Ms. Goldberg's question?
Yeah, I think if I could defer to Gene Walters, CAO, he can address the money issues for her.
Gene Walters, CAO. The overall project will add, over the next 3 years, less than $1 million to the cost of the general fund. The overall project, including the MICLA funds and the general fund commitment, is $12.9 million over the 42-month life of the project. Does that answer your question?
Well, no, it doesn't actually.
Councilwoman, maybe if I could just clarify.
On the fiscal impact on A, it says the fire command and control system is estimated at $12.9 million. After C, it says the cost to migrate the FCCS exceeds $11.9 million. So there's $1 million difference depending on which report we adopt.
Councilwoman, the $12.9 million represents the combined costs of both the existing maintenance of the
Mr. Chairman, I'm sitting right next to him and I cannot hear him.
Can you speak directly into the microphone? You don't have to look at the council member because all of us can hear it
That's actually the noise in the room I
equally.
was complaining about.
Go ahead.
Okay. The $12.9 million refers to the entire cost of both maintaining the existing system and at the same time migrating it to a better system, which will replace the present dispatch system. The only additional cost to the general fund in that 12.9 is less than $1 million over the remainder life of the project, which is approximately 3 years. The difference that you see in the 11.9 was in an earlier report which referred only to the development of the replacement system, where 11 new positions were being requested. Upon some prodding by the council people, both general managers of the fire department and ITA took a closer look at this, and they have reduced the need by using a resource pool of the existing people so that only 3 additional positions are needed, which reduced the number from an overall cost of $14.5 to $12.9.
Okay, but what was the 11.9 then?
The 11.9 was the cost where both the maintenance was separated from the enhancement, and the enhancement with the 11 new positions would have cost 11.9. That did not include the existing costs at that time. If you added the existing cost, then it took it to 14.5 million.
And so we're being asked to approve A. Okay, thank you.
All right, is there any further discussion? Then open the roll.
Which one is this? Budget and Finance 7A, all right.
Close the roll.
12 ayes.
That's approved. Next order.
11 called special by Councilman Burnson. If staff isn't here, he wants it continued to Tuesday.
All right, Mr. Byrne, without objection, item number 11 will be continued until next Tuesday. That's the 3rd. Are there any other 12-vote items?
No.
Excuse Mr. Burnson. Next order, Madam Clerk.
16 called special. The recommendations differ.
All right, can I get a motion from Ms. Goldberg? Do you want to make a motion on number 16? We have differing recommendations.
Give me a minute. Yeah. I'll move Budget and Finance. I'll move Budget and Finance.
All right, Ms. Goldberg has moved. Is there any discussion? Open the roll. Close the roll.
11 ayes.
That's approved. On the item, Madam Clerk, that was just continued on item 11 until Tuesday, Mr. Alarcon is requesting that he can continue till Wednesday, and Mr. Bernson will be here then, so we'll, without objection, members of council, continue item number 11 until Wednesday the 4th.
On 16, please.
16 we've just approved.
Forthwith.
Huh? Without objection, forthwith. Next order, Madam Clerk.
Item 24 called special by Councilman Holden. I don't know which letter he was calling special.
All right, well, we'll just have Chair recognize Councilman Holden.
Mr. President, I have no problem with 24. I did want to hear about why we were receiving and filing 23, and I think that was, I had it numbered wrong in my book. And Mr. President, just for the purpose of asking a question relating to item 23, I intended to call that special. Could I ask for reconsideration for that purpose, and then I'll ask the question?
Which item, Mr. Holden?
23.
23. Without objection, members of council, reconsideration of item 23. Chair recognizes Councilman Holden.
Thank you, Mr. President. It shows here that the $200 million, $200,000 for the legal fees that was being paid for the EIR, the final EIR report of the sports arena. And we were receiving and filing that. And I'd just like to know whether or not that means that the sports arena people, corporation, the developer is paying the $200 million for, I'm sorry, $200,000 for that EIR. Maybe someone could just tell us about that and why. Mr. Deaton around? This is about the $200,000 for the final EIR report. Was CRA going to pay for this originally, Mr. Deaton? On the sports arena?
My understanding, the situation is in October, the CRA submitted to council for approval for requests for a transfer of $200,000 to pay for legal services. The indication is now the city attorney has requested the matter be withdrawn because the attorney fees are being paid directly by the developer.
And so the CRA should never made the request, is what you're saying. Was it an understanding that the developer would pay all that initially? We didn't know. How did the developer decide that they would pay rather than the city?
I'm not aware of that
You don't know what?
discussion.
You don't know?
I'm not aware of the discussion.
But you were in the transaction with them all the time, weren't you?
This is relative to the EIR part of it as opposed to the business deal aspect. The EIR and the land use issue is handled by CRA,
Well,
not by us.
I'll give them a vote finally. receive and file.
We appreciate your
Receive and
assistance,
file.
Mr. Holden.
All right.
He's giving legal advice, or okay? What's before us?
The communication from the Chair, Housing and Community Redevelopment Committee.
Okay, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That is approved. Next item.
Left on the desk that was called special inadvertently, or you have 24A through 24C, the special event motions. Need a roll call.
Okay, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
12 ayes.
That's approved. Next item.
This is a time for comments from the public on non-agenda items.
Richard Robinson.
Mr. President, members of council, the appointed and elected city charter reform commissions will be meeting in Councilperson Alatorre's district. Commissioner Nick Pacheco is chairing an open forum at the Old City Hall in Eagle Rock tomorrow, Thursday, at 6:30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all the card we have, so the public comment period is closed. Next item.
Motions for posting and referral.
If there's no objections, unanimous vote.
Councilman Alatorre has requested to be excused from today's meeting due to illness. Meets council policy.
Unanimous vote.
Closed session items 26 and 27.
We'll go into closed session items. Would everybody in the chamber not involved with the executive session please leave the council chamber? We're back in open session. What do we have before us?
You have a motion to adopt, Mr. President, settlement in the case item 27 today, $200,000 to the plaintiff and $500,000 to the cross-complainant.
Okay, prepare the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
That is approved. Forthwith on that. Next item.
The desk is clear, Mr. President.
Members, we have some adjourning motions. Members, I'd ask we adjourn in memory of the mother of Will Hines, who just recently retired after a long-time city employee in the CLA's office. She passed away.
All members.
All members on that. And also, I'd ask that we adjourn in Ray Caston, the calligrapher for the city for 45 years. He is survived by his wife Dorothy, his son Kent, and a daughter Karen.
All members.
He passed away after a illness. Rex Layton called me to tell me yesterday that he passed away, and we all knew what great work that he did for the city and for all of us. So it's really sad that we adjourn in his memory. Ms. Galanter?
I would just like to add to that, I think we all should take note of the debt we all owe to all the calligraphers. I mean, the effect of those certificates in acknowledging contributions by our residents is really phenomenal. I mean, it's just a piece of paper, although we do the best certificates of any level of government. Any government in California, we got the best ones. But really, people appreciate that so much, and people say to me, are there real people who do this, and where are they? And so I just think in noting the passing of somebody who did that, we should point out that it's not like fixing a street, but boy, it does a lot for the city.
Okay. Mr. Holden?
Mr. President, members, it's a sad announcement that Marie L. Smith, who was served as president of the Claude Pepper Senior Citizen Center for an unprecedented 3 terms, served as the second vice president, first vice president. In fact, she had 22 years of committed service to the Senior Citizen Center of Claude Pepper, and she just passed away, and we're going to miss her, and we're going to ask for adjournment.
I'd like to join you on that, please.
You met her, right?
Any, Mr. Wax?
Well, I just want to add to Ray Caston. I enormous respect for him. The reason that we proudly say that ours were better than the others is a great deal to do with Ray. He wanted a standard set. He knew the importance that thousands and thousands of people who contributed to this city for no other reason than the satisfaction of the reward of giving themselves had these certificates of recognition as perhaps the tangible thing and what it meant to them. And he also served this council and the mayor. It didn't matter if you needed it in an hour because something important came up. He made sure you got it. His people were dedicated, devoted. They worked. They really served us, and through us, also the city, remarkably well. And he's going to be greatly missed.
Call the roll.
Mr. President, I'd like to, one other individual, Reverend Peter Kwan, active member from the Korean community and active in the city of Los Angeles, who passed away, and we ask that we adjourn in the memory of Reverend Peter H. Kwan.
Second.
Okay. Call the roll. Aye, the council is adjourned.